Directors. Morning, everyone. Welcome to the February 2nd, 2024 Island Transit Board of Directors monthly business meeting. Call to order, roll call.
Eric Marshall.
Janet St. Clair.
Jill Johnson.
Jenny Bright.
Melanie Bacon.
And I'm Craig Sear, Vice Chair.
And board member Norton Solson.
And yes. Lance, you're there?
He's by phone. Lance is muted.
Lance, we want to hear from you.
I have asked him to unmute. He's still.
How's that?
That works. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
Any additions, subtractions, modifications to the agenda? I do have one. And that is, we're going to have a business item number one, which comes from Island Transit Finance. I think each board member has a list of vouchers, late breaking vouchers. So that'll be business item number one, and everything else will roll down. Anything else? Okay, all those in favor of the modified agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes. All right, now is the time for public input and comments, and we set the time aside for members of the public to speak to the board about subjects of concern or interest or items not already set aside for a public hearing. Comments are limited to 3 minutes, and public comment may be ended or modified if the comments become disruptive and are not germane to business at hand. Input requiring lengthy comment is best submitted in writing. Thank you for your public comment in advance. We really do appreciate hearing from you. We live to serve the public, and so we look forward to hearing from you. Is there anybody online who would like to address the public or make a public comment? Right.
That is
And,
not the public comment. My apologies.
anybody in the room who would like to make a public comment?
Thank you, board, for letting me address you.
Please state your name.
Beth Munns, I live in Oak Harbor. The reason I'm here is because of your last board meeting. And I was shocked, dismayed that we now have 6. Usually, if someone has a grievance or a concern, they contact either our executive director or the board chair, and they ask to be put on the agenda with their concerns. And I don't understand why Commissioner Johnson did not do that. She could have been on agendas and say, hey, I have concerns, the board is an equal representative, and gone through her things instead of, it appears to me, and what I read in the paper, I was not here, that you barged into the meeting. When I read the articles of incorporation, it says in Article 8 that these amended bylaws are adopted by the Board of Island County Public Transportation Benefit Area Corporation, may be revised or amended at any regular or special meeting of the board by a vote of the majority of the whole membership of the board, provided that copies of the proposed revision or amendments shall be made available to each board member at least 1 week prior to the regular or special meeting at which proposed revisions or amendments are to be acted upon. I have since found out that there's some wiggle room to your monthly board meetings. And I'm just concerned that it looks like a power struggle. Now we have 3 commissioners and 3 council members. How do you break the tie? Will the council members feel threatened by the commissioners, all 3 of them being on the board? I would hope. We seem to have a very workable board with staff, could ask them questions with each other. We had disagreements, as Mr. Sear knows, but we talked them out. It was civil, and we submitted things that we were concerned about. And I'm just concerned this appears like a rush job. I feel offensive that Commissioner Johnson felt like I didn't represent Oak Harbor well enough. She made a comment at my last meeting, which was very touching and meant a lot to me, but she said that Bob Severance, the mayor, and I were brave to live in the same city and work there. So every day you go to the grocery store, you go here or there, you have people that are, oh, yes, that was good. But she lives in Oak Harbor, that's correct, but she works in Crewville all the time. I would think a better solution, if we had a chance to talk about it, is maybe have Oak Harbor send a second council member. Or, but I just felt it was rushed. I felt it was forced down the throat of the board at the time. And one of our regular board members was out of town. And so it just felt wrong to me. And I'm wondering, Matt, if they voted on it last meeting, if they could re-vote, if they decided after a month of reconsideration that this might not work, but maybe not. But I just worry about those factors.
So,
And in the corporation, this will have to be amended, but it also says the original 5 members will vote on it once it is written up legal-wise. So I appreciate your time.
so thank you for your comment.
Thank
Are
you.
there any other public comments?
Nothing online.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Board Chair, would you like me to address kind of a different clarification of what happened last meeting?
Could we catch Beth? Could you catch her quick?
She did what she needed to do. It wasn't about the organization. It was a pot shot. She got it done. So
Well,
I don't
she-
think we need her back.
So there was actually, I would like you to clarify that what happened was not at a meeting of the Allen County Board. It was at a different group, and it would be wonderful for the public to hear that. Hold on a second. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so the bylaws are separate and apart from the board composition. So the meeting last month, or was it last month? The last meeting when the board composition, that is a process that is required by state statute. Every 4 years, notice needs to be given, which it was, to the county and all the cities. And every 4 years, a gathering is convened to review the composition of the board. And the only guidance the state statute has is that we can only have we can have a maximum of 9 members. But at that, every 4-year meeting as required by statute, the members that join on that day, and it's a little ambiguous of what that gathering actually is. I mean, clearly it would be a public meeting, but it's not a defined group other than the county representatives and city and a representative from each city is required to be given notice to come and meet and review the composition, and quote unquote, if appropriate, they can make a change to that composition. So that sets our board number and how it's composed via a mix of county and city, and that's up to that group to determine how the number of slots are filled. And then down the road, we will actually do a bylaw amendment consistent with that required action that was required by statute to review. And in our case, there was a change to that composition. So everything was done according to statute. Notice was given. There was a lively discussion about how the Allen board should be composed in the future, and ultimately that group decided to make a change. So that's how we came to be where we're at today. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
I'm going to move on now. Does any board member want to ask a question?
Just as a point of clarification, when I went on vacation and we talked about it at our assignment committees, I had asked Jill to come in my stead. So
Okay.
just for point of clarification, there was no hidden agenda. It was just I couldn't be here and I'd made that request.
Craig, I'd like to make a statement in
Sure.
response to the public comment. So first of all, I want to state that I hold Councilmember Munns in the highest respect and regard, the highest respect and regard. That said, I also want to state that I stand by my vote at the composition meeting for the reasons that I stated during that meeting. And I think that Oak Harbor deserves more representation as far as votes, just because, for all of the reasons that were stated at that meeting.
Okay, thanks very much, everybody. I think we'll move on to our agenda now, as amended. The first is business item number 1.
One other thing. Oak
We
Harbor
have the
didn't-
consent, Scott.
Oak Harbor didn't bring forward a proposal in the composition meeting to add another city council person. I didn't see that leadership come and I'm not criticizing Commissioner Munn's service. I wanted to participate, and wanting to participate isn't not inherently critical of the organization. And so that interpretation is someone's interpretation. It was not what I said. I didn't come in here and say, you're doing it wrong, and I'm here to tell you how to do it different. I said, I think the area with the largest population deserves more representation based on level of service needs. That's what happened. And I don't write the newspaper stories. I've learned to not criticize them, but I don't write them. And I would think any other elected official would understand that they don't write them either, and you don't choose the adjectives that they choose. I have yet to say anything publicly that has not been controversial. I could say, again, I could say Friday is my favorite day of the week, and they will write a story that says I hate 6 other days. I can't control that. But what happened was I wanted the largest population region to have a larger voice.
Okay. Any other comments, board members? All right, now we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Thank you, Matt, for noting that I was skipping over it. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second,
Second. Any items on the consent agenda that need to be pulled? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
I,
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. Okay, business item number 1, approval of a list of vouchers that each board member in person received. Sorry, Commissioner Bacon. I don't know if you can see, but it is very tiny print. And the reason that it's here now and not on the agenda was there's some new systems that Island Transit is interacting with, and this data wasn't available at the time that the agenda was put together. Do you have any comments you want to make, Paul?
Well, just the new list has additional checks that were written. And they're included on that revised list that weren't included with the board packet. So.
Okay,
And can I just ask,
One notable is our Wistip insurance, which was
Yeah.
supposed to happen tonight.
and if I may just ask a clarification question, Paul, for the board. Those other the other checks, the additional ones are ones that I and Robin have already signed off on. Okay.
thank you. Yes, yeah, good point.
Yeah.
We're glad to know that, actually.
We're going to be, I've been in boards where we review vouchers. Is this gonna be a regular practice to see our vouchers? Because I trust as long as we have our financial practices and what I call the 2-touch system in place, there's nothing, I see no reason this level of detail has to come to this board, so I'm just curious.
It's always part of the consent agenda normally, and for the reasons that Craig stated, it wasn't included in the materials that went out, and so that's why we're.
Okay, so that's on me that I just assume when they're coming in the consent agenda, I don't tend to look at whether you spent. Well, I would have noticed the $456,000 to Wistip, but I don't get too concerned about the $163 for pest control.
So this is really just for information purposes only. These have already been signed off on and.
Well, they have-
Drafts and
They
things.
have been signed off, but the finance committee gets first look at it, but then the board later votes
That's
for
just-
approval, and that's something the auditors. can do for us.
Okay.
Okay, any other discussion?
Thank you.
So for clarification, you're saying that the finance committee did see these additional warrants?
The finance committee didn't because this data was not available on Monday.
Okay,
We weren't able to meet Melanie for that purpose, for that reason.
Okay, any other questions?
It's a motion to approve or a ratification of.
We need a motion to approve.
Yeah.
Is there a motion to approve?
I'd make a motion to approve the vouchers as presented.
Second.
Seconds. Councilmember Price seconded. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Or any opposed? Motion
I abstain,
passes.
Craig, because I don't see them, but I don't doubt that they are all proper, but I
Yeah.
abstain.
I should have asked if there are abstentions, and I did not. Thank you. So that passed 4-0 with one abstention. All right, business item number 1, the election of the 2024 PBBA board officers. We are going to elect the chair, the vice chair, and the secretary. Are there any nominations?
I would nominate Craig Sear for the position of chair.
Second.
All right.
I'll second that.
Jill made it.
I already did. Oh, I'm aggressive, haven't you heard?
It was the Jets.
It was the Jets.
So what was this? Was there a second nomination? Okay, for,
For Craig as vice chair, or chair, sorry.
and do we have a nomination for vice chair?
I'd nominate Jenny to pick up vice chair.
Second.
Jenny Bright. I should be more formal.
And is there a nomination for secretary?
I'll do it again because it's such a lot of work.
I nominate Jameson Clay. Okay, so we have a slate, Commissioner St. Clair for secretary, Councilmember Bright for vice chair, Councilmember Seer for chair. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. Unanimous for those nominations. Great, all right. Next business item, the appointment of the PBA Board of Directors 2024 representative to the IRTPO, which is Regional Transportation Planning Organization. Are there any nominations?
I nominate, oh, sorry.
Before we go to nominations, I'd like a clarification on how this works. And Jill, you may be able to help with that. I appreciate that Todd Morrow is there every time we meet because he's the subject matter expertise to the IRTPO. But I understand there's a reason that Todd cannot be our voting member in the IRTPO. And I wanted to clarify that because I'm not sure I fully understand it.
I haven't researched it lately, but it's my understanding because I'm not an elected.
Yeah.
That's the problem. However, as you have noted, we have other people that are voting members, such as the city manager of Oak Harbor, who is on the IRTPO board. So I frankly don't know. It's an issue for the IRTPO. And I'm an ex officio, I think is my title, and sometimes I'm listed, sometimes they don't include me. That's fine, I don't care. But it's a good question, and we probably should ask the prosecuting attorney for the county, maybe.
So if we appoint an elected official to IRTPO, they, as of current practice, could delegate that to you or participate. I don't have,
Yeah.
I don't have, it either or, but it's just,
Well,
it's the value of when we're ex officios and we're not the subject matter experts, that always makes me a little anxious.
so what I would suggest is let's elect a representative today and then an alternate, and then let's research it. And if we find out differently, you all can do something different.
Or
Yeah.
they could delegate or you could go
Potentially.
together. Okay, and I'm not waving at you for any reason. I'm just a little bit Italian and I talk with my hands.
Do we need the delegate and the alternate, or could we elect the delegate and explore having you be the alternate? Because you're always there. The issue's largely quorum for
Okay.
IRTPO,
Right.
right? So if the delegate, if you could be the alternate for whomever the board chooses as delegate, then mission accomplished, right?
Sure. Matt, do you have any thoughts on that?
You could do that way, because we can all, this isn't something we can't change at a future meeting, so.
Okay,
I would make a motion to nominate Eric Marshall to the IRTPO.
is there a second?
Do you accept? I'll second.
Okay, are there any other nominations to the IRTPO? I do not see any. All those in favor of appointing Eric Marshall as the representative to the RTPO, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
If so allowed, I'd like to make a motion to nominate Todd as our alternate pending whether that is legally allowable.
Second, right?
Second,
Second.
I like that. So I've intended, I'm always texting him and asking him questions the whole time. Driving him crazy.
Councilmember Bright seconded. Any other alternate nominations? I don't think so. All those in favor of appointing Director Todd Marlowe as alternate, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, abstentions? Congratulations. Thank you.
Because I've been doing this all along, so whatever.
All right, we move on to the next business item, selection of our 2024 Board and Finance Committee. This is actually not a official nomination. It's
It just
actually the
is.
chair can appoint the Finance Committee, but you know, I would actually wonder if there's any volunteers who want to be on the Finance Committee before I would make an appointment.
She does.
You are appointed. I actually volunteer to be on the Finance Committee. I've enjoyed it. So is that acceptable?
Sounds good.
Okay,
Sorry, Paul, you're stuck with me again.
yeah.
It's been a good, well-functioning group.
Yeah, it's a good group.
All right. Moving right along. Next business item, January service update. Thank you, Sean.
Welcome, everybody. So this is just a brief report of some of the service adjustments we've done starting in 2024. As you know, we're working through our service enhancement, Island Transit Maximized. And with that, we have a scheduling engine that schedules our paratransit clients, our on-demand clients. And we've had it for a little more than a year or so, year and a half. And we're learning on this. We've adopted it longer on the Whitby side than we have on Camino. We started it on Camino in September. And so people, you know, they act different with change. And we've identified some areas that we could be better with this because we're learning this as well. So what I'm going to talk about are just some of the bullet points on Camino that we're doing to make the scheduling better. And what I mean by better is we've had some complaints where people are on the bus too long. And the scheduling engine is a computer software that doesn't care about anybody's feelings. It's looking at what the window is for your pickup and your drop-off time. It's gonna do that correctly. But it's not gonna think about that you've been on the bus for 40 minutes for an hour, say an hour. It's not gonna think about that and then you have to use the restroom or whatever. And it's gonna continue to schedule efficiently with the resources. Now with that, we've discovered some areas that we can be better and fix that. So on Camino, one of the things that we've done, that just started a week ago, on the 28th, is we added 17 stops. We only have one zone, which was formerly the Route 2. It's now the Zone 2C. And we added some stops in there. And what people were saying was, well, we're having to walk further to get to those stops now than we would have had a traditional fixed route bus come through there. So we added 17 additional stops. And we think that's gonna work for everybody. And so we look forward to looking at the data for that and seeing how that goes. Go
May I
ahead.
ask a question, Sean? So the challenges were primarily on the south end where we don't have good walkability, where most of those changes were done?
So on the south end, remember, we didn't have service there at all before.
Right, but this is with Island Transit Maximized.
Right,
Which
and
is
so
what
we
we did,
added
yeah.
that, we went out and identified stop areas there.
Uh-huh.
These 17 stops are coming back from the original 2.
Oh, okay,
Those were the most complaints, because the people on the south end never had the service before.
right.
So anything they're talking about is all new, and that's things that we have to go out and vet. So if it's, you know, we can't get in somewhere, we need to go out and look at that.
Yeah, thank you. In the new service guide that's about to be printed, there's a wonderful map that shows all of the stops, including the new ones, and you'll be thrilled when you see it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know we've had multiple conversations. I want to express my appreciation about all of that.
Yeah, we hope that adds, just much more access.
Do you have criteria for selecting those stops, like safety criteria is what I'm asking about? So there's coordination with the county, shoulder width, everybody,
We do.
okay,
Yeah, we have a process and, we have to get permits to be able to pull in there, and we're looking at safety. And also, we work, just kind of like we work with Oak Harbor on a new route. And, you know, we picked out our stops, we went out with them. They, you know, had very few concerns, but they did speak up where they did see concerns. They also gave us information where there may be more, you know, more things going on, like more projects, apartments, things like that, that we may want to think about those also. So we do work with those agencies to do that.
Sure. I'm
Yes.
sorry, before I move on, and so the 17 steps, those are live now, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, as we speak. All of this is as of January 28th. And this is all Camino that we're talking about right now. So we've also identified additional hours in the schedule. So, you know, we're having personnel issues. We had to be able to put a schedule together to be able to get the guaranteed hours for our operators. And so we really didn't use those hours. So we could have used those hours to, you know, give someone else a ride that had to wait longer. I mean, those are things that we need to be looking at when we're dispatching throughout the day. And we realized we didn't, you know, there's probably a good 8 hours in the day that, you know, are just idle times that we can use that to help out in some of these instances. And so we're gonna start using those and identifying those. And one of the ways we're gonna do that is before we had 2 schedulers and they're scheduling, the machine scheduling, they're watching, they're taking, you know, inter-county trips, things like that throughout the day. But we've singled out live dispatching, which is another component of our scheduling software. And that's all they do throughout the day. They keep operators on schedule. If I get behind, they're going to pull that trip and put it on another bus. The machine is always looking, so if you get 2 cancels, it's gonna put 2 people there. You know, it's not that you're just gonna have that empty space like it used to be, and that's why we selected that. And so this is what the live dispatcher is doing every day, all day. We're identifying what we're looking for. You know, operator breaks, looking for people on the bus too long. Appointments are a big one. You know, if the machine comes, you've been waiting, you know, for 20 minutes, and the bus comes, and you need to go a particular direction and someone has an appointment, it's gonna go the direction of that appointment. So that's what I mean by, it's not gonna say, well, you've been outside for 20 minutes already. The appointment takes precedent over the fixed route or the on-demand trip. So that's how that's set up. So on Whitby, we've added additional para shifts. So we were running about 8 buses. And we've added a 9th bus just to schedule 2 every day. So that scheduling engine is able to schedule to 9 different vehicles here on Whitby, and instead of 8. And just earlier in the week, we had 11 vehicles out. Just last week, we had 11 vehicles out. Fast forward to this week, we were able to cut 3 shifts that were already scheduled to go out, but with the reviewer, they were able to go in, slice those trips, put them together. We actually had, for the first time, 3 people sitting at home that were waiting on phone calls to come in and drive, and that hasn't happened in a while. And, you know, we're really happy about that. I attribute that to the live dispatching, and we will be following up with that over and over every week. Hey, we had this happen. We need to make sure we're watching for this. And so that'll just become a part of that position.
Sean, before you move on, have there
Yes.
been higher volumes with para in the evenings?
In the evening, so the evenings, no, it's not that it's higher in the evening. What happens is people are going back to someplace, so maybe we picked them up from the south end. And so now we have to figure out with less service as it gets later in the evening, how to get them back there. Or places, you know, out Jones Road or going out that direction where service starts to decrease as it gets later. We've got to still figure out how to get them back. And that presents a challenge for us.
Okay. Yeah, I have received some feedback about that, and with the para especially,
Mhm.
being on the bus for lengthy periods of time sometimes can be problematic, so
Yeah,
I
there's-
just wanted to throw the question out there about that.
Thank you for that. A lot of different things that we can do for those scenarios too. So we talked about the live dispatching, kind of mentioned the weekly ridership review that we do in-house in operations. We're gonna include the reviewer on that, so it isn't just us saying, hey, you need to do this or you need to do that. They're aware of any type of complaint or issue or something that we need to resolve coming in weekly, and they know that's something on their list that they're working for, and it's not something that we're just saying, hey, we need to do this too. This is something we need to do because in order to make the service more effective. So I think that's gonna be really good too. And then obviously, this was a kind of a two-part thing. We replaced our paratransit and we co-mingled, which means we allowed our fixed route to our on-demand customers to book trips with para. And we had to do that based on resources. And so we've chosen to do that, but the other part of that is we're gonna be working on changing out our fixed route from Route Match, which we've had for years and years. And everybody in the industry knows Route Match has had some serious issues.
You're talking software.
Software, and that's our fixed route software. They're the ones that map the buses and give us the ability to provide service for our fixed route. So we're gonna be looking to, you know, engage in meetings, the same way we did it with, when we brought on Echo Lane. So we'll be looking to do that in the near future, and we look forward to keeping the board updated on, that progress as we go along. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Sean, could you just highlight, the second bullet under Camino about the additional bus?
Okay, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Thanks, Todd. So we had an issue where a person came from Marysville, I'm gonna use my hands, went to Terry's Corner, missed their connection. That bus turned around, went back. So that person sat for probably 30, 40 minutes. When the bus came back, you would think it would get them and take them on to South Camino. Well, when I talked about, you know, the priority, so someone else came and they had a doctor's appointment. So now that bus went back to Stanwood and then took that person home, which put that person on the bus for like an hour and 40 minutes. Something I think we should have caught, the live dispatching would have caught. Now, what Todd's asking about, what we've done is we've zoned a bus that can't leave Camino. So it can do south end to Camino and that's it. So if you do get caught in that situation, that bus would have been able to come and get them and would have cut that wait time down and taken them home. So that bus is stationed on Camino. It can't go to Marysville or Stanwood or what we're talking about, so.
Are riders advised of that, of the priority situation, if they get on and they have a late ride time, that's gonna happen?
So that's a good question. I'll have to get back to you on
I
that
think that
one.
would be helpful.
Yeah, I know we have a bunch of information of how to and how to use our service, but I have to look for that specifically. before
Yeah,
I can
if it's
answer
on
that.
para and on the on-demand, that would be helpful,
Okay.
because I think there would be greater understanding
Mhm. Okay.
around that.
Appreciate that. Definitely jot that down. Yes.
Oh, go ahead.
I have two questions, and you'll know the answer to one of them. Is our paratransit, I'm trying to remember how paratransit is restricted or not. So we have folks with disabilities that are using transit for getting to employment, but is that allowable in paratransit? Okay, that was my question, because that's where one of these issues came up. And then in the software change, you talked about the change. Is that internal or external software? Because I remember when we were implementing our external software that allows
Mhm.
users, I have it on my phone now.
Yeah.
To track their route and know all that. When you're talking about that software, is that our internal or our external software?
That's our internal, which could then, you know, result in something external that the public may need, but right now, we don't know what that is, but we're focusing on our internal
Okay,
for that change.
thank you. Those are my two questions.
Did we have routes cancel because of staffing issues?
Great
So-
question.
So we're gonna talk about that later. It's actually in my report.
Oh, I
Uh,
jumped in.
And, but,
I thought,
Sean, why don't you talk about the unprecedented sickness that was here and also other transit agencies?
So just to keep it short, the reason why we had those cancels that you saw, my wife noticed them and was asking me about them when I got home as well, is because we don't usually have to do that. And if you compare us to, you know, the other transit agencies, you'll see that throughout the years. That particular day, we had 9 operators out, a lot dealing with COVID and other issues, the most ever since I've been here. You know, and out of that, we had 3 of our dispatchers call out, which left 1 opener and 1 closer, which is obviously more than the hours of the day. Then we had to have an associate was the closer, which is a fill-in that was able to close us for the day. So the staff was really great on how we were able to fill that, but that is what you saw. And I had let Todd know that that was gonna be a possibility as the call out started happening. It was like the domino effect. And at some point, you know, we had 7 pieces of full-time work to fill with the people that we still have in the building with no more operators. So that's why that happens. And, you know, that's a result of, you know, we don't have the personnel.
I was just clarifying if that was true. And then my question more is, when those scenarios happen, how do you determine what routes you take the drivers from? So is it that the person who called out that route doesn't get covered? Is there a hierarchy of routes that you shift people around to? Or because of this new software system, I've got an old school route mentality and really this is just a dispatch scenario now where the typical routes aren't how we're staffing.
So our routes are set up to where they're intermingled. So you might do a 1, you might go out on 411, you may be coming back for a 1 down south. And so a lot of times if we get to that point, we may be able to get someone to provide some of those routes. We just don't know it's at that time. We'd love to be able to put that out ahead of time where we'd be able to cancel, but we're not able to do that. And so when it gets to that point, we have to cancel what that driver is doing at that time. If we can't get any of that filled. If, you know, we have to take into consideration if it's a commute run, you know, that's coming off the ferry, obviously, we're not gonna leave that. We're gonna figure out something else has gotta go and someone's gonna go do that.
So there's a hierarchy of routes that are prioritized.
And I can speak with you more about this.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for this. By the way, the number 60 route, in the afternoons was canceled and that's my route. So
Uh-oh.
I was well aware of it. But I will say, as we were pulling into, ferry dock in the morning, the driver, before he let any of us off, said, by the way, this route is at risk for this afternoon. So all of us were aware, which was it was good that communication happened. So this is a service adjustment report. How often is there a service adjustment?
Great question. So here, I'm not sure which month, but we'll talk about that, but we do a service performance report. And I think it's like I can't remember, Meg's not here. So every 4 months it is, every quarter, I think it is once a quarter. And we go through what the routes look like, and that's the next thing that you'll be looking at, is data, what the on-demand looks like, you know, what the ridership. And if there's any routes that are in jeopardy of us having to make more adjustments, that's just to keep all of us aware if it's an underperforming route, or to give it kudos if it's an overperforming route.
So every 4 months, there's a potential for adding or in an underperforming route, dropping it, is that right?
And
Or is that
every 4 months, we do a report to the board.
And so is there 6 months then that a service adjustment happens?
So in that report, there's certain criteria that we meet. Yes.
If I can help out, and it's usually about twice a year that we look at having service adjustments. And we're lucky because we don't connect with a bunch of other transit agencies other than Skagit here and the other places is pretty easy. So we don't have to have the same service adjustment day as regionally as other people are having. But we do it approximately twice a year, make those changes. That's the question I think he's trying to get at.
Okay, so I have three other questions. And sorry for a complaint, but, this is me looking after the south end commuters to Oak Harbor. There is no bus that meets the 5:30 ferry. And I frankly strongly feel like there should be a number one northbound to Oak Harbor whenever a ferry pulls in on a normal schedule within some, little bit of 5 to 6 minutes if it's late. Obviously, you're not gonna wait 10 or 15 or 20 minutes. But right now, just for the other board members, to know, is that if you're coming off the ferry at, 5:15, 5:20, there is no 5:30 bus. And I do see people waiting a half an hour for the number one. And in fact, one of the, riders in our van pool coming back in the afternoon, we missed a ferry because of the late. The next ferry was late, which meant we missed the number one that was northbound, so we had to wait again. So anyway, that 5:30 is pretty critical. I would really like to see some scrutiny on how, if it can possibly be added, because it is an issue for up and down the island.
So I conveyed that to staff, they looked at it, and unfortunately, it just wasn't possible to do at this time. It's something that they'll keep in their back pocket, but it's not unusual to have hourly headways, meaning a bus every hour. And obviously, we want to keep everybody happy, but we can't have a bus ready for every single trip. It's just not possible for us to have half hourly frequencies for every ferry that comes, as you know, they're every half an hour. And I know this,
Let me just modify what you said.
Yeah.
During commuting hours.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not talking about noon, one,
Yeah.
noon, one.
And we try to do that, but in this instance, because of the network that's involved and how you have to schedule and make this trip match up with other trips and be able to move the coach operator from one route to another route, it just wasn't possible. Staff looked at it, they really did. I talked to them a number of times about it. It's something that we'll continue to review, and as we have more staff available and more resources, we'll look at it.
So this is a coach operator issue.
I wouldn't describe it as that. I would describe it as a system issue, the way the network is set up. If we were to add that extra trip, you then have to reconfigure the whole network to have somewhere where that bus goes after it does that trip and before it does that trip. So it isn't just about one particular trip, it's about routes and the whole network. And we can talk about it more at length, and certainly any specific concerns that anyone has, certainly you can share them here, but I would really prefer to be able to have staff work, one-on-one, and then be able to give you answers and not try to do that level of work here, if that's possible.
Yeah. So another question is, you mentioned that we didn't have to call out 3 operators that were on sort of standby.
Yeah.
Do the standby operators, do they get any compensation during the time they're on standby or not?
Yeah, I think we talked about this at the last meeting. They're guaranteed 20 hours for that week.
Okay, fine. All right. Any other questions from anybody? All right. Thank you, Sean.
Thanks, everyone.
By the way, I know that you're sporting the new brand there.
Yes.
Very fancy.
Very
Got that
fancy.
comment all the way from this morning, all the way to work, so.
Okay, so now, very interesting item for us to look at is a rideshare fare proposal, business item number 5.
So the reason our goal for this, proposal is to make our rideshare program more manageable, marketable and accessible to all. There's a lot of commuters that on the island that miss out on the on riding in rideshare because of the fare. Next slide, please. Okay, so, the issue is that the current fare calculations are based on the size of the vehicle, the size of the group, and the miles that they travel. This creates thousands of possible fare, calculations because it can fluctuate every month, depending on the number of riders. The current fare requires, a minimum group miles, and I apologize for the error on there where it says group number, and a minimum group fare amount. And then, the minimum miles and the monthly fare make the groups cost prohibitive to small groups staying locally. This whole program right now, the way the fares are structured, make them kind of burdensome for both the commuters and for the administrative staff as well. The solution would be to introduce a monthly fare table based on the daily round trip miles that the van travels, or the vehicle travels. No more minimum group fare, no minimum group miles, and each person would pay the same amount every month, and it wouldn't change based on whether the group dynamic changed. And that's gonna make it a whole lot easier for everybody to manage.
So we compiled some change benefits, and as you can see, and I'm sure you've all looked over from the pre-package, besides just making it a little bit more marketable and equitable, it's going to make the reporting a lot easier to explain, to understand, to manage. As you see, as we progress, it's very complicated right now for both the participants of the program, but also on an administrative side as well. So that's gonna help us, both them and us. It's going to allow people, this is a big one for me, it's going to allow people who are traveling shorter distances. So people who, let's say, fall outside of our normal bus route, whether that be because of where the bus route goes or the timing of the buses. But let's say they live a little bit outside of that range, but they commute into Walmart or Safeway. And maybe they're a little bit lower income wage. Currently, our route, is prohibitive to them because they have to meet a minimum number of miles and a minimum fare of 462 or 483. And so what this does is this would open the program up to people because they're going a shorter distance. And as you see from the fare tables, it's a smaller amount of money. And so currently we have people going farther distances, or they have access to more people and can bring down their current fare. Simple fare structure for me, I do a lot of our outreach and marketing and communication in this area. And right now, you can't tell somebody what their fare is gonna be because you have no idea, because it can change every single month and there's thousands of calculations. And that's really hard for not just us to explain, but for the people in the vans that are trying to recruit other riders. They can't even really tell them for sure what it's gonna be. So it just becomes way easier to market. Again, as we turn the page and we see what those samples look like, those are just a few pages of the samples. There's more pages of what potential fares could be. It also positions us, this is another great benefit for us. It positions us alongside of all the other groups or all the other agencies who have already implemented a flat rate fare. And when we're at different conferences, that's what they're all talking about. How did you do it? How is it working? People are excited about it. It's happening. So it really gets us right up front with the ones who've already gone ahead with that and leading the way. And a lot of them really are finding that it has opened the door to communities that traditionally haven't participated in the rideshare van pool program. And obviously for us, as you can also see, it gives us the opportunity to move to an online reporting as opposed to Excel. So it becomes a greener administration of our program. We're not getting things printed off all the time, reams of papers everywhere. Obviously, we can expand the program and get more people utilizing it because it's at a better price point. It's going to make it more cars off the road, which is what we want to see, especially on those ferries. And of course, more people access to island transit services, which is always a benefit for us.
So what you see on the screen is, as Joanna had referenced, the possible fare amounts that each group or person could pay based on the miles and number. It's very complex and this is just 2 of the pages for each size group. It can go on and on depending on how many miles that van travels. And then the current monthly report is on the other side of the screen there, and that's what it looks like. And even now, some of the group bookkeepers or managers that complete the report, even though they've been doing it for years, still struggle monthly with doing the report and have to send it to me for approval before they tell everybody what they owe. Because it's not just their amounts that may change because of the number of people in the van, but it can also be their subsidies. They may move their subsidies up and down because of the number of people that have changed. And so it gets very complicated for even seasoned bookkeepers.
Can you explain what a subsidy is and also what the fare covers?
Okay, so the subsidy is like Boeing, Microsoft, the military, they all provide a stipend for the group for the purpose of carpooling or van pulling, and it can be applied to their van pull fare or their ferry passes or both. So like Boeing may offer $120 a month for anyone that commutes, and that gets applied to their fare, deducted from their fare. They don't have to get a whole full 120. If their fare is only 70, then that's what they would adjust their subsidy to. The fare for the van covers the vehicle, the maintenance, the insurance.
The ferry
Yes.
pass.
The ferry permit, which is the yearly permit that allows the vehicle and driver to go fare free and also provides them with priority loading and unloading on the ferry.
Fuel?
And fuel. Yeah, we do give them a fuel card, except the electric vehicles, which we give them a credit for charging at home. Okay. So here's an example of what some of the other agency flat rate fares are. Spokane Transit does it by county, all the others are doing it by mileage. And our fares fall kind of in between, probably Intercity and Grace Harbor. Pierce is a little more expensive, but they're a larger program. Link Transit in Wenatchee has also got a by county flat rate, but I didn't put it on there because they're still trying to figure out what their rates are gonna be. Next slide. So here's the proposal that we came up with, and this, what I did was looked at fares of each group, average fares of each group for a period of months, 3 to 4 months, and where they fell, and tried to come up with something that would not take them too far out of what they're already paying. In some cases it's lower, some cases it may be just slightly higher. And then I also took into consideration their subsidies, their maximum amount allowable from their employer to try not to go too far above that. But also I took into consideration what we get from the fares, so that there wouldn't be so much of a difference between what we are currently getting as opposed to what we would get based on each proposed structure. And we would also like you to consider the flat rate fare for students. We only have one student group right now. They go up to Western Washington University. And this is their first year. But considering the fact that they are students and not necessarily working, or maybe working, part-time jobs while they go to school, sometimes, for this group in particular, the fare is quite excessive. And they were taking the bus, and it took them 3 hours to get from here to school on a daily basis, which is quite a bit. And so now they're like an hour. They're one of our Tesla groups. So Did you have a question?
I did, but I think I answered it in my own head.
Oh, okay.
So it was, which is really a terrifying concept for you, which is that we have a large number of students commuting to Skagit College, but I think they're just using our regular bus schedules and those are working for them.
Yeah.
Up in Mount Vernon,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah,
this
for
is
now,
Melanie.
it's-
I have a question. I'm sorry if Janet's comment wasn't answered yet first. Go ahead with that.
She answered it herself.
I did,
Okay,
I'm good at
okay.
conversations, so.
Thank you. So my question is, my preference obviously always would be to go with the cheaper fare for the riders, right? I love the fact it's a free ferry, free bus for in most situations. If we could do the cheaper one, that's what I would like. But it looks like it would be a decrease in revenue of about let's say an estimate of $25,000 a year, approximately, more or less. So can we support that kind of a decrease in revenue?
Yes, we can.
Should we?
That's a policy choice. And maybe when you continue on, that will provide information. And remember, you don't have to make a decision today. This is just the beginning of the process.
Yeah.
Before you move on, would you anticipate that this removing the variability from the costing and having just level cost would then increase ridership?
Yes,
Okay, so
definitely.
we may be able to offset the loss.
Right, because currently, even with the groups that are out there, when somebody is joining a group and they want to know what their fare is gonna be, it's hard to say because it's gonna depend on, well, once they join the van, the fare is gonna go down, so then they have to calculate, figure it out. It would be nice for that manager or bookkeeper to be able to say, yeah, you're $50 a month, period. It also allows them to set their subsidy amount and not have to change it, because some groups, they go up and down so much that they're going in and out of their accounts every couple months and changing them up and down and up and down. And for a lot of them, they're not really computer literate, and this is hard for them. They just want to get in the van, go to work, come home, and not have to worry about all this other stuff that they have to do in between. So. Next.
Oh, sorry.
Next slide.
Let me think.
Oh, did you have a question?
Well, maybe, but let me see the next slide, because
Okay.
sometimes I get ahead of the curve.
Okay.
Okay, let's keep talking through what you're teaching.
Okay, so this is a mock group for the option 1 fare. Based on the vehicle miles, they fall into the $130 price range because they go 80 miles per round trip per day. And so their fare currently would be at $115.87. They're going up to 130, so it is slightly increasing them to by about $14. But their maximum allowed subsidy with Boeing is $120, so they would end up actually only paying $10 per person out of pocket. So it's not impacting them terribly. Some groups, they may be able to reduce their subsidy because it's a lot less than what they're currently paying. Next slide. So the next one is the same group, same miles, but at the lower fare, it would be 120. And as you can see, their subsidy would stay the same at 120. They wouldn't have to pay anything out of pocket, but the advantage to them would be that it would always be $130, and that's what they could set it. Or 120. Yes.
So as someone who doesn't use Vanpool, and Craig, you may help me on this. If these are really good illustrations, and by the way, I'm just chuckling on the names. I really enjoyed that.
You're a driver.
Yeah, really enjoyed that. So, appreciate that
Really
the
make it.
example given is Boeing.
Yes.
But I'm wondering when Vanpools, setting aside a student rate, let's assume you have a group of working folks that now have a van pool going up into Skagit to go to work at Skagit Hospital. And they don't get a subsidy. Let's talk about that in terms of cost impact.
So I anticipated this question. So if a group is traveling below the minimum, which is 1,050 miles, their fare is automatically $462 a month if they are in a small van currently. And if they're, in a larger van, it would be 483. So if the group had 5 participants, they would pay $92.40 a month. If they lost a rider, they would end up going up to $115.50 a month. And then if they lost 2 riders and they were down to 3, they pay $154. So that could go up and down every month. If they were on the flat rate fare, I don't know what the round trip miles is for, from here to Skagit, but I would guess they probably fall in the $51 to $75 range. So based on whichever fare option you choose, they would be either paying $90 or, what was it, either $90 or $110 a month, and that wouldn't change. So it wouldn't matter, you know, if they're paying $90 a month, it's less than what they're paying with the current fare in either option, except for if they have 5 people in the van. But it's gonna be constantly fluctuating. If they lose a rider, gain another rider, maybe they have 6 people, their fare would go down, but they would be constantly changing what they pay every month.
Could I just interject here?
Yeah.
This is a huge thing for a director or manager of a van. There's 2 real pressures on a van pool manager, and that is having enough people in the van to keep the van going, and then the fluctuating fares. And so going to this proposal where you can just tell the riders, your fare will be $80. As long as we have a van, you know, we have to have at least 3 people in this van, it'll be $80. That is huge. And I know this specifically because I've been trying to set up a van since last November. And the 483 was the thing that made it extremely hard to do. I finally was able to do it this past week, and I drove away with the van this past Monday, and it operated for its first time on Wednesday. And the reason, well, that's all I want to say now, but just reducing this so that it's a fixed fare is huge. It's really huge.
I think like when you're looking at those optional fare tables as well, that we do want to consider the people who don't get subsidies. Because we will be reaching out, once this becomes from a marketable standpoint, once this becomes something where somebody might only have to pay $50 to be able to be a part of a local van pool, that's amazing. If you're somebody who doesn't have a vehicle and you can get with your other coworkers in the heart of Oak Harbor and you can somehow get a van pool to get you home at 11 o'clock at night or 12 o'clock, whenever Walmart closes these days, you know, it's a huge deal. So looking at those fare structures too is just something to consider. Well, what about the people who don't have the subsidies? So.
Go ahead, John.
No, sorry.
Well, and if you're gonna be doing outreach for those people that have to pay entirely out of pocket, they can leverage the transportation element of their FSA to be able to help pay for that, and that's gonna save them significant money as well. They can use those funds.
Well, and also being able to budget from month to month, what your costs are gonna be, instead of, well, I hope nobody joins the van or nobody leaves the van this month because then my fare's gonna jump $30.
Well, and it also becomes for us an educational piece to our employers in Island County who don't currently offer any sort of commuter benefit. Because we have a fare-free bus system, so it's not like the Orca card that some, you know, places are able to give to their employees. So then it becomes an educational piece for Stacy and I to get to our local employers when that time is right. And just let them know that commuter benefits are something that can be utilized in Island County, so.
The flat rate, if you have 3 people in a van at the flat rate, it covers your fixed cost for that vehicle. So you only need 3 people at this rate to make sure that all the costs, replacement, maintenance, fuel, all that is covered. Does 3 people cover the fixed costs?
Well, it would depend on what the cost is. It's gonna fluctuate between group as it does now, but, well, the minimum fare right now covers those costs. the minimum fares, that's how they're calculated, but with the flat rate fare, a smaller group who is only paying $50 a month and there's only 3 people in the van, it may not capture all those costs, but on the other end of that, the higher the groups with more people, we have a 12-passenger van that has like 11 people in it. They're gonna be paying a little more than what they're paying now, which may in the end cancel each other out or compensate, make that compensation for the program as a whole, not per group. But as a whole,
It's a pool.
it's a pool.
It's a utilization pool.
Yeah.
Again, what's nice about that is that you've got Boeing paying the subsidy. So part of that subsidy is helping to cover maybe the people who, you know, are
And
the cars that aren't.
And the military has their TIP program, Transportation Incentive Program, which also gives them, based on their mileage, a certain amount of funds to cover their commute as well.
Do
Go ahead.
you worry at all about de-incentivizing larger groups traveling together? Because first of all, I'm not a lover of the people, right? Like I would prefer to have fewer people in my car and more personal space, right? So if I was like, well, look, you have to have 3, there's 6 people going to Boeing at once. We all are gonna pay the same fixed rate anyway, whether there's 6 in a van or 3 in a van. Let's just take 2 vans. Do you worry at all about the flat rate de-incentivizing people from carpooling together because there's no financial upside to them
We
to
just-
ride with more people?
We just talked about that yesterday, and we've talked about it with some of the other agencies, and it could in their minds say, hey, let's reduce the size of the group. However, the control still rests with us as an agency and our policies. So even though the state only requires 3 people in a group, we're encouraging them to have at least 4. But if somebody is looking to get in a van and we know that this group only has 3 people, we're gonna tell them that they need to accept more riders in their group. So the control rests with us, even though we don't like to push it on the groups because they're the people that have to ride with these other people and we want them to be cohesive. But we can say, you know, you guys need to get more riders. We have a lot of people looking to get in a group. And so you need to, even though, you know, and the whole idea behind the program is to get single occupancy vehicles off the road. So that's always going to be the mission. And that's what we're going to remind our groups of, that this is the goal. It's not just to supply you with a way to get to work. It's a whole program.
And that wording is included in the program information and agreements that they sign.
Yeah.
So, several questions. First of all, the youth that ride below 18 that ride in the van pool program, their fare is not changing. It will still be 0.
It'll be 0. We don't currently have anyone under 18 riding. But
Right.
it would be 0.
Right, we passed a resolution last year, I think it was, or the year before.
We did, I mean, it's state policy as well.
Yeah.
And that's true with all the agencies.
Right. So again, this policy, I just want to emphasize for the board, this is a rider-centric fare proposal. It's not vehicle-centric. So it focuses on people, not the vehicles, and I think that's important. Also, occasional riders. There are times when on the ferry, somebody who commutes to Boeing, they don't go in often, but they occasionally go in. How are occasional riders going to be treated?
So we, in figuring all of the tables out, we did consider, a daily rate for people who commute maybe 4 or 5 times a month or less. We didn't include it in that because we hadn't really solidified what we would want that to be. But we were thinking between $10 and $15 a day. But we, you know, we're still playing with that number and our main goal was to get the flat rate fare in, you know, in there. There's not a lot of occasional commuters, but, we did recognize that some groups, do have some that only go in a couple of times a week. But we just haven't added that yet to the proposal, but we can continue to work on that and re-present it when the next go round.
Okay,
And they have 3 more slides left, so maybe it might be helpful to get all the way through.
All right, go ahead with the next one.
Okay, so, one of the great things about going to a flat rate fair does make the reporting simpler. So if you remember back a couple of slides, you saw that gigantic Excel spreadsheet, with estimates for next month and previous month and all of that. Well, this is what we've created instead. It's something that they can literally click on a link. It takes them to their specific report. It's got the names of their riders already there. They fill in everything they need to fill in. And it takes about, 3 to 5 minutes to do. They also, we have it so that it's got, what's the word for it? Like requirements. So they can't send us, like they currently do, monthly reports that have not been fully completed. So that saves so much time for everybody involved administratively, and for them too, because it's gonna keep them on track. And, yeah, so, and when they, go ahead.
It has a link also to make the payment.
No, they still have to go to the
They still have to go
website
to
for
the
that.
website.
But so still the bookkeeper or the manager would complete this each month. But it's very simple, it's very straightforward, it's got the explanations built right into it. They can literally upload, they can take, if they're using their phone, they can take a picture on their phone of their gas receipt and attach it right to this document. And then when they hit submit, they get a copy of that report that they just completed. We get emailed a copy of that report and we're good for the month.
In a
And it's-
PDF format.
yeah, and so I don't even know how many, like, it just saves a lot of time.
It
for both-
simplifies
both
it
sides,
for all of us, and, I currently spend maybe 2 weeks or more going through and processing all the reports and, payments, and, then sending out receipts and, their subsidy statements. So,
So this becomes also their receipt. It just saves time, as you can see.
I just want to comment on this.
Yeah.
I've worked in Excel for my entire career. I have pretty high skills in Excel. And back in the day when I would take that spreadsheet and I frequently made mistakes on it.
Not
It
uncommon.
was complicated. It really was, because there's so many inputs. And so what are you gonna do with all your time? I mean,
trust me,
This will be huge for the Vanpool managers.
I
And frankly,
believe so too.
I was so focused on the fair table, I actually kind of skipped over this, but now in hearing your presentation, I really understand. This is really gonna affect me as a Vanpool manager too. It'll be great.
And there's a lot that don't work well in Excel at
Or even
all.
have it.
Or even have it, so
Yeah, okay.
sometimes I complete the report for them.
Yeah, so hopefully that sold you. Okay, so change challenges. Obviously, with any change, there's some change management that has to happen. And so we have created, in anticipation of hopefully getting some forward movement on this, we've created some information to send to our current participants because we do want to get buy-in from them. They're the ones who are using it. We've got some long-terms, 30-year veteran of Vanpool who's gone over 1 million miles with us. We've saved him hundreds of thousands of dollars. We want him to be happy. We want him to be happy with this, right? Because he's been our great advocate. He has taken so many people off of the streets, and out of single occupancy vehicles to go to Boeing from Oak Harbor every day. So we want that buy-in from them, especially for the ones who maybe their fare might increase slightly.
So this is Melanie.
Yeah, go
Can
ahead.
I have a question regarding that first bullet. So I was gonna ask that earlier, but thank you for bringing it up again. So you gave an example of a van that has 11 people in it.
Mhm.
And so my question is, how many vans do we have that have that? That would be a case where people's rates would go up. That's the example that you gave. How many vans do we have that have that sizable a population riding in them who do not have subsidies? How many people are we talking about for bullet number 1?
There's no group that size that doesn't have a subsidy. Most of, that's the largest group that we have. There are some that have anywhere from 7 to 9. But the majority currently only have 5 or 6 people and then maybe 7, but, there's only, I think 3 groups that do not have any sort of subsidy currently. Everybody
are-
else has a subsidy.
Thank you. So those 3 groups, are they in groups whose fare may increase?
Yeah, possibly, yes. No, a lot, well, it depends. I'd have to look at that specific group.
So,
Some of them will go down, some of them will go up slightly, but most of them will stay within their subsidy. The groups that don't have a subsidy, I think 2 of them, their fares are very close to what they are now, and 1 of them will go up slightly.
So Commissioner
Okay.
Bacon, we can provide that information in detail. Our staff are gonna actually notify each group and let them know what the potential impacts
Right.
may be to them. And once that's done, we'll compile it for you, so you can also review it.
So the table that
Okay,
was
thank you.
in one of those previous slides, the mock group, we'll be sending something like that out to each group with their numbers in it, so they'll be able to see the direct impact for their group.
So like anything, you can see the list there. I don't have to go through them all. There's just change involved. And so obviously we'll have to do some marketing and we'll have to do some training for our current van pools. And updating all of our print material and our website and information like that. So really the time needed to offer training and have riders adjust their employer subsidies will be a challenge. And if you want to advance the next slide, and this is the timeline that we came up with to do that change management. And you can look that over and see how you all feel about that and if that would work for you. So there you go, questions.
yeah, I really look forward to hearing from the groups. I think that will really help us make a decision. So,
And that'll be March 1 at your next board meeting. We'll hopefully have feedback for you and continue to get feedback. And then April 5 is the date that we would ask you to consider making a decision.
so yes,
So you did a very good job.
Thank you.
And my personality seems critical, but because you did a good job selling the positive, I want to make sure I'm asking questions about all potential pitfalls, right? So I don't want this to be taken as not supportive. It's just to make sure that we put enough tension on all the tension points. So so as I listened to this story, we had a couple of scenarios we described about Boeing and Microsoft and larger corporations that have these rideshare programs that offer subsidies. And some of those ride shares may or may not cover the cost of their van, depending on how many riders are in that, which means then local dollars are covering the cost of those subsidies for an out of our economy workforce, right? This is designed for people to live here, to earn and make money somewhere else. It's not necessarily a program that's designed to stimulate our own
As it is
economy.
now.
As it was presented, also, it's designed for those corporate out-of-county organizations. I wasn't here, you said the Navy, so that was one local one, but I wasn't hearing a lot of locally owned corporations or companies that were utilizing the van program.
Right.
Right, so I have a philosophical question about that I'm gonna wanna explore next month about what is the purpose? Because it is costly to only have residents without jobs, right? We all know as government officials that there are economic drains, not necessarily value adds to an economy and a governmental system. 2, we've got growth projections that we're all concerned about how we're gonna support. So making it easier for people to commute off island to work, is that our goal? I don't know,
So,
but,
yeah.
right, these are part of the things that I sometimes feel like we're really organizationally good about accomplishing our singular mission in the context of broader conversations.
So can I say,
Yeah,
okay, so part of the reason that we're looking at this flat rate fare is exactly what you're saying, is that we want to promote commuting within the island. We used to have a couple of vans that went from Oak Harbor to Nichols Brothers. And though when things went bad for Nichols Brothers, those went away. But since then, we have not had any groups that commute solely within the island. And because it's cost prohibitive, if you're going from Coopville to Oak Harbor, you're gonna pay $483 or $462 a month, which is cost prohibitive for most people to go that short distance. With this flat rate fare, they would pay maybe $50 or $70 or $90 a month, as opposed to $115 or, whatever that fare is gonna be. So that is part of it. We want to be able to market it to local businesses to allow them to promote it to their workers.
And Commissioner, when you and I meet, we'll talk about the philosophical pieces and you can talk at future meetings. I am concerned because we've got a number of agenda items.
Okay, and then also I have one more question about if somebody's under 18 and they're in a van pool, does that count towards the 3 or it does not count towards the 3?
So that's been a good question, and we haven't really talked about it much, but our first impulse is that no, it does not. It would be in addition to.
Okay, because I just want to make sure that we're covering the fixed
Yes.
cost of operating
Yes.
the vehicles.
We don't have it in writing, but that is our perception of it, is that, yes, they would still need the 3 fare paying passengers or group members.
So to her point, non-fare paying individuals riding in the ride share.
Don't count towards the
Don't count.
minimum.
Okay, that was my question as well. Thank you.
So I think we're gonna bring this to a conclusion. I know how much work this was for the two of you, and particularly a whole bunch of questions from me. So, I'm really pleased to see it, thrilled that we're actually on the process. It looks like Commissioner Bacon has a question.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
thank you. I do have one question. So thank you for bringing up Nichols Brothers, because I've been thinking about them. I know that Nichols Brothers brings people in from the other side to work at Nichols Brothers in Freeland. In order to be a manager of a bus like Craig is, do you have to be an Island County resident? Can it
No,
go
so
the other
the-
way?
The,
So-
the thing with Vanpool or rideshare is that you either have to work or live in Island County. So if you live outside of Island County, but you commute in to Island County, and that includes Camino, then you're eligible for one of our vans or
Okay.
vice versa. So we have some military that commute in. I'm sorry, what?
Do we have any of those?
Yes. Yes.
Great.
I do have, I am in communications with the HR director from Nichols Brothers because we're trying to get them back into one or two of our vehicles.
And Lance, do you have any questions?
He's muted, so he's just unmuted.
Lance, are you talking?
He's not a.
Is there a way we can
No
add-
questions.
Okay. All right, thank you. We'll talk later. Yeah. Let's see, where are we? I think we are now moving on to, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item number 6.
Right, so on our original agenda, item number 6, we're talking about scheduling a board of directors. Tom.
Yeah, thank you. Board members, 5 of you did respond and complete the Survey Monkey poll. Thank you for doing that. This was to get information about what you would like to do at a board retreat and also when you would like to have it. And we're running out of time, so let me just tell you that given the information that you have provided, there's essentially 3 days that I want to put forward to all of you to see if they will work with your schedule. And we're thinking of an 8:30 to 1 o'clock time at PRI, which is just, across the tree farm property over here, that we would do it. So Central would be Island. Sorry for Janet.
That's okay.
You're good.
I come over all the time.
Good sport. So Monday, March 25th, Thursday, March 28th, or Friday, March 29th. If any of those are,
Say the dates again, I'm sorry.
yeah, Monday, March 25th, Thursday, March 28th, Friday, March 29th. This would be 8:30 to 1 o'clock. If any of those don't sound good to you, let me know,
3:28 won't work for me.
okay?
It would
I can do
be-
any of them.
I don't do any of them.
I agree with you. That Thursday part.
Okay,
So it sounds like Monday or Friday.
yeah,
Are we trying to decide right now?
yeah.
Okay.
I prefer Friday.
Okay, so Friday, March 29th.
Well, you don't do it just on me.
Unless you all go back and look at your calendars and have a problem with it, let me know and.
Friday would be much harder than Monday for me.
Again, I can do either.
I prefer Monday if possible.
Is Monday okay?
I prefer
March-
Monday.
I'm easy as long as I don't have to leave the island.
Okay,
We have a band for it.
okay, so Monday, March 25th, 8:30 to 1 o'clock. We got really good feedback about the fact that you want to not just have updates, you want to do discussion. And the main, the highest topics was working on the South Woodby Transit Center project, our zero emission project was the number one, of course. And then looking at the sites and facilities that we have both here on Woodby Island and Camano Island to make sure that we have what we need for zero emissions. And then also, someone was very pointed about mentioning that we talked about discussing our local investment pool of choice. And so those would be the four main things that we talk about. Yes.
I didn't take the survey. I'm very interested in understanding our service level philosophy, so I appreciate the facilities conversation, the electrification conversation. I do have questions about our paratransit philosophies,
Okay,
level of service as it relates to that, and
Okay.
just our overall
great.
level of service philosophy that I think is important.
I appreciate that. So I will try to talk to you one-on-one about those. The other issues are ones that had a majority of interest and are really kind of critical right now. What you're talking about.
Is
are
foundational
it's
to the purpose
foundational.
of island transit,
Yeah,
right?
which is not
Service.
being questioned right now. But when we have our planning process in the summer, that's when we do look at those things. But I will talk with you about it, and if you want to bring it up at some future board meeting, that's certainly fine.
So the question, is Lance gonna be attending the board retreat?
I hope so.
Lance, does that work for you? I didn't hear from him whether that day would work.
I'm excited to meet my imaginary friend, Lance.
Lance, would, Monday, the March 25th work for you, 8:30 AM here on Central Woodby?
That's really looking ahead. I've been so busy lately. I can't commit to anything right now, but,
Okay,
yeah, we'll talk further.
okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. I think we do need to move on. Is that
Excellent,
right?
Yeah.
So, we are meeting on Monday, March 25th.
correct.
8:30, is that right?
Yeah.
8:30, okay, very good. So now we move on to the monthly reports, our executive director report.
Yeah, just very quickly, I think all of you may have seen, we emailed this out before every board meeting. I don't want to go over every item for the sake of time. I will point out that our ridership continues to be down, but it's growing, down post-pandemic. But we are growing, and in fact, compared to a year ago, our ridership is up 10.8%. Also want to mention to you, there really is what some call a crisis in the bus manufacturing industry right now, and that's concerning because obviously we buy buses. And in fact, one of the bus manufacturers that we are slated to purchase, actually 11 vehicles, is in trouble right now, and so we're trying to find out the future of at least the 9 vehicles that they haven't started to build yet. No, Proterra is one of the troubled ones. No, this is Lightning Motors. We have 2 of them are completed, but the other 9 aren't, and so we're trying to figure out what that means. And this is something we talk about across the country and at state association.
But we don't prepay, right?
We do not, exactly. Yeah. Zero emission transition, obviously, we have a lot that's going on there, and that's why this is such an important topic to have at our board retreat. Not to discount Commissioner Johnson's questions, but we really we've got requests for proposals for architectural and engineering services for the installation of the hydrogen fueling that we're working on. Related to that, then will be the design build of that actual facility. We're also looking at, working on studies of this facility and our Camino facility to make sure that we have the site and land necessary to do all those things. And we'll need to talk to you about that. And then, of course, we're seeking federal bus funding and transit funding for hydrogen replacement buses. Wanted to mention Terry's Corner, we're still waiting for the State Department of Transportation Real Estate Division to complete their work on what the cost will be for them to have us build on their property. And remember, they want an airspace lease, and we've been battling with them. The good news is finally, work is being accomplished as best we can tell. And maybe by June is what they told us. We're trying to get it moved up quicker. I've been working with Representative Dave Hall and the governor's office to try to get that resolved, because we've been waiting. They had a change in staff as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Recruitment continues. Good news is we have 5 new coach operators beginning next month. And then we continue to recruit for coach operators. We had 3 really good countywide recruitment events, and we also go to Navy events as well.
So those 5 have their CDL,
What's that?
the 5 have their CDL already?
No, they
Okay,
will.
they'll be going in.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Todd,
Yes, sir.
could you be sure to put the number in the executive director report? I don't think it's here.
I did put the number 5 new coach operators. It's at the end of staffing is where that is.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. All right.
It was a word instead of a number.
I don't make sense of that.
And then finally, on the operational standpoint, just to let you know, we do have 3 Vanpool vans that are available from the 2 groups. The rebranding event was, I think, a huge success. Board member Marshall and board member Bright were both there, as well as Chambers. And I'm sorry, it was when you guys had a regularly scheduled meeting, the commissioners, that was awful. Those things happen, my apologies. But we were really excited. One of our committee members of the rebrand effort was the one that actually had the curtain come open, and that was really neat. Right?
She really enjoyed that.
Very special. Legislatively, I want to bring a couple things to your attention. On the federal level, obviously, we're still waiting for a final approval of appropriations for this current fiscal year that we're in. You know that the government's operating on the federal level by a continuing resolution. The reason why that's important to us at Island Transit is because in order for us to receive the congressionally designated or directed spending that Senator Murray and Senator Cantwell have for us at Island Transit for our South Whidbey Transit Center project, in order for that to happen, there actually has to be a final bill. Good news is that I did hear from Senator Murray's office and to just double check some things, and everyone thinks that there will be a final bill. So we'll keep our fingers crossed so that we can get that extra $4 million. On the state level, the other big concern, and we'll talk more about this another time, is that initiative 2117 that would repeal the Climate Commitment Act. The reason I mention that to you is because a large portion of the new state money that comes to transit, it also goes a lot of other places, comes from that. So if that bill were, if that initiative were enacted either by the legislature or the public, there are potentially funds that we are hoping to get Island Transit that we would have trouble getting. And I am specifically talking about the $7 million line item that Representative Paul got for our zero emission transition, also the $310,000 for the Terry's Corner staff support facility that's in there. And then simply, you may know that we now get an extra $1 million a year because we don't charge kids to ride our buses. That would be impacted as well, and when we rely on that for our operating expenses. So we'll talk more about that later. Yes, sir.
Later.
Okay. I am done, and I apologize that I was so fast and didn't have a chance to meaningfully answer Commissioner Johnson's questions. So we're
Okay, we're gonna now move on. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
To Finance Manager report.
Yeah, good morning. If she pulled up the slide. This finance report will be for December of 2023. And you want to change slide? There you go. First topic is cash sources. December 2023, tax revenue was down about almost $12,000, 0.83% versus December of the prior year. And you can see also our contract revenue is very small right now. It's the 2,500, it's just a small grant, I believe, listed. We're waiting still on 2 contracts, and we received 2 contracts, about a week ago, and they're processing it in their system. So there's a stepwise thing that happens there, but we're still waiting for them to finalize those details before we fill it. Next slide, please. Sales tax revenue graphically, you can see the blue's actual budget, and green is the percentage change from the previous month. And you can see our December sales tax, which is collected in October, was down almost 54,000 or 3.72%. So you can see on the green line where the black figures above the green line is when there was an increase, and the red is in a decrease. So this year we've seen quite a bit of situations where our actual is below our budget amount. And so that gives us a little idea where the economy is moving on the island, just based on the sales that are occurring in Island County. But for the year, you can see that last statement on that slide, 100.7%, we would expect 100% of our budget was actually received, and so we were slightly ahead for the entire year. Next slide, please. There you can see our operating grant revenue, only item listed, Antrim grant $2,500. Next slide, please. Investment interest and rates, I just keep track of this so we can see where our ICTIP is relative to some of the other investment options. LGIP is one that a lot of government agencies use. And we, by our bylaws, are required to stay within the ICTIP. And then the 2-year treasury rate is one that I like to put on there for reference. And interest rates are decreasing slightly recently. I mean, we probably see it in the news. LGIP seems to be able to stay on top of the curve by investing in very short-term securities. Next slide is our cash uses. You can see our December payroll, 710,000. We're not including our quarterly taxes, and that figure is down about 100,000, 16% from last month, down 74,000, about almost 10% from last year. Our non-payroll, large figure this month, 1.1 million, was up about 730 or almost 195% from last month, and up 310,000 or about 40% from last year. So purchases in the month of December. Next slide, please.
Those cash uses are actual expenditures. They're not allocations towards fund balances or any savings. It's just expected.
Free cash.
Okay.
You can see our one large capital, listed warehouse or tree farm, 467,000 or so. That's the property next door, 38 acres. Next slide here is describing our cash reserves. You can see those.
Yeah.
You can see how we assign our cash balances among different assigned categories. We have bus, van, sport vehicle, other capital, land acquisition, fuel, and operating. And then the unassigned is just our general cash, probably beyond what we had budgeted to assign. Less any purchases that we've made or reimbursements that we've received. And so you can see subheader there, cash decreased $295,000 for the month of April from the previous starting balance. And that large land purchase was a main contributor to that.
So our December cash was 295. I just want to make sure I understood what you just said, but we did a
Okay.
400 and some odd thousand capital.
Yeah, you can see right here, this, starting balance,
Yeah,
ending balance. We added to the reserve, but we subtracted more, so the net was a 295.
so really it's a good lens because we made a very strategic investment and really if we take that out, we're doing fine.
Right, if you didn't count the 467, there would be a net increase,
Yep, okay. Just want to make sure I'm reading it right.
of almost a quarter million. Okay, next slide is, cash reserves. So December cash, as you can see, was slightly over $60 million. We had a $300,000 decrease, and you can see it graphically on that chart there, the bar graph was downside of it. Next slide, please. Budget actual, revenue side. You can see our target, of course, the end of the year, 100%, and we achieved 90, almost 92% of that. And we were ahead in van pool interest, local sales tax, federal miscellaneous grants. We were down, let's see, it's in state grants and capital. State grants was due to we're waiting for those contracts before we can bill them. And your capital, a number of projects have been delayed, so we haven't received the revenue from them.
So timing.
Next slide, please. Budget and actual expense side, more dramatic in our target of 100%. We only spent about half of what we budgeted. And there were only two areas where we spent above what we budgeted. One was utilities, communications, and then categories were far below what I probably would have expected, and for various reasons. You have salary and wages. We haven't hired as many people as we expected. We didn't fulfill a number of the grants, or even spend the money for those capital items that we expected. That's not even 20% of what we had budgeted. Of course, you can look at the annual budget figure for that area. It's the largest in the bucket.
Are the utility and communication cost increases from utilization or rate increases, and we should expect those increases to be higher each month?
I think in January, after we passed the budget, they raised a number of our utility rates. And so that's a large portion of it.
So being consistent, those cost increase will replicate every month throughout the year.
And my presentation, so if there are any questions,
Very much.
Chair, I have a hard stop at 11:30 and I know we have two executive session items. Are we taking action in either of those? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we are now gonna move into other business. Or comments anybody wants to make?
Board member Norton has in both of the.
We're inviting you for the executive session.
Boy, this is breaking up.
We are. Session.
So the.
Are we on recording?
Is,
Our executive session. Answer anything else? Reconvene next one.
Good meeting.
everybody.
Good meeting.
Thank you to our new board members. Welcome. Congratulations to the office.